Gen Con is quickly approaching in Indianapolis, and I am back with some more tips to help you have a great time at the convention. Hey, it's Jared from Specifically Solo. I did another video like this last year with a bunch of tips in it for Gen Con. I'm back with 12 more tips that will hopefully make your Gen Con experience great. So let's go ahead and jump into tip number 1. So my first tip is something that is back at Gen Con this year after being gone for a while, and that is a bag check. If you've got a lot of stuff that you are carrying around, maybe you have a bunch of bags of board games that you want to drop off, or you have, a wagon or something like that that needs to be stored somewhere, Gen Con is partnering this year with a company called the Mobile Locker Company, and you can store your stuff at Gen Con. So this is going to be in the convention center on the second floor on room 231, and it's going to cost $20 to check in whatever you have that you want to store for that particular day. You do have to show your Gen Con badge to prove that you are an attendee, and this is not going to be open 24 hours, but it will have certain hours throughout the convention. Thursday through Saturday, it's going to be open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., then on Sunday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. This seems like it's going to be a great solution, especially for somebody like me. I usually pick up a bunch of games, especially the first day on Thursday, and I'm hauling them around everywhere, but I don't really want to walk all the way back to my car yet to drop them off, and you probably don't want to do that either. Walk to your car or your hotel, 4 or 5 times a day to drop off games. So this is going to let you have a storage spot for them. I'm really interested to see how this works. I hope it works well, but I'm excited that it's going to be a service that'll be offered at Gen Con this year. My second tip is if you are getting into Gen Con early on Wednesday, you should check out The Stink. It happens on Wednesday night from 5 until 8 p.m. at Union Station. No, it's not a bunch of stinky people all gathered together. It's a bunch of gamers gathered together that are really excited for the convention to kick off. And there's usually some little giveaways and prizes that are handed out throughout the evening. There's a bunch of tables in there. If you have games already that you've brought and you want to sit down and play them, you can definitely do that at the Stink, and it's just a great opportunity to meet fellow convention goers and maybe form some friendships that can last even beyond the convention. So tickets for the Stink are sold out right now as of this recording, but they always accept walk-ups. They just let all the ticketed guests in first. So if you don't have a ticket, that's okay. Just show up at Union Station on Wednesday night, say, hey, I don't have a ticket for this, but I would really like to come in and check it out. They will definitely let you do that. It's a great event. I went for the first time last year, and it was a lot of fun. They did a little scavenger hunt type thing while people were waiting in line to grab some goodies. Again, there's a bunch of tables for gaming. Really a great way to kick off your convention. So checking out the Stink is my second tip. My third tip is to check out the used games area and also the Gen Con auction. This is happening again in the Indianapolis Marriott on the second floor. This is a two-part deal that's going on in this room. Half of the room is used for the auction. The other half is used for the used games area. Lots of people will bring their used games to sell at Gen Con, and this is a great place to look to try and get a great deal on something. Maybe you're searching for something that went out of print a while ago, and you're hoping maybe there'll be a copy. That's a great place to look. And the auction is just consistently going on while Gen Con is going on. There's a lot of cool things that they will be auctioning off. There's the charity auction that happens every single year where a bunch of publishers donate items. They raise a bunch of money for a great organization that they decide upon every year. There's lots of cool stuff that you can bid on. The auction is really fun, even if you don't bid, to just go watch for like an hour or so. You get to sit down, take a little bit of a load off, look at some of these things that are being auctioned off, and who knows, maybe you'll be interested and you'll bid on something and you'll win it. But I always make a point to check out the used games area and also the auction every year I'm at Gen Con, and again, that's in the Marriott again this year on the second floor. So my next tip is to check out a giant game. These are magnified versions of games that are available to be played at Gen Con. Think of your favorite board game and then just scale it up basically in terms of the components and the size. And it's a lot of fun to check these out. I looked at some events for this year. Looks like they're going to be doing a giant Concordia. They're going to be doing a giant Galaxy Trucker, giant Pandemic. That's just a few of the options. And they're really fun because they let you play a game that you might might already know or have played a lot, but scale it up and just kind of create a little bit of a wacky environment. So that's definitely something that I would check out. You'll see them being played usually in the convention center, just at various spots, sometimes even in Lucas Oil Stadium, like on the floor of the stadium. Sometimes they have them set up in there as well, but they're really fun to play or even just walk by and watch for a few minutes and see kind of what's going on and see that magnified game. So that's that tip. Check out a giant game. My next tip is one that I even need to remind myself of at times, and that is to take a break from the vendor hall. You know, the vendor hall is a lot of fun. There's tons and tons and tons of stuff to check out in there. You could be in there all day. You could be in there multiple days. But the vendor hall is also exhausting. That's a lot of people all next to each other, all trying to look at stuff. You're trying to get to the booth that you want to go to, maybe grab a certain game that you're going after, and there's lots of chaos and it's loud, and sometimes you just need to, take a break from that for a few minutes. So what I found really works well for me is I'll just exit the vendor hall at some point, maybe even just sit on the floor outside the vendor hall there in the convention center, or go up to the second floor of the convention center and try to just sit down for a few minutes, have a little snack, and maybe, gather myself a little bit, and then go back into the vendor hall. I found that if you take that 10-15 minute break to, grab a snack, use the restroom, whatever, you get recharged and re-energized, and you're able to go a few more hours in the vendor hall. So that's another suggestion from me. Just take a break from that every so often. It's so exciting, it's so fun, but it can be so draining as well, and you want to have enough energy for the whole convention, and I found that taking those little breaks throughout the day really helps. My next tip is to play a big social game. These are a ton of fun. Blood on the Clock Tower, or Two Rooms and a Boom. I played for the first time a couple years ago. I'm playing it again this year. I love Two Rooms and a Boom, but it's a big game that takes like 20, 30 people. That's just really not an experience you're going to be able to get outside of a convention where you're going to have that many people gathered that are willing to play a game like this. So definitely check out one of those games. There's Werewolf that goes on in the evening as well. Deception Hong Kong is another one that gets played. There's a bunch of these that are happening in the evening in the convention center. Two Rooms and a Boom is my favorite. If you haven't played that one before, it's split up. You've got a piece of tape in the middle of the floor, and you've got two rooms, and you're trying to basically, depending on which team you're on, either blow up somebody or defuse a bomb. And while that sounds kind of harsh and scary, it's actually a lot of fun, and you make connections with people, and you have to really think a lot during the game. It's another deduction game, like a lot of these are that are played in the evenings at Gen Con, but that one's really, really fun. Lots are fun to check out. There's still lots of tickets for those available, and if you're a late night gamer, this is something you definitely want to check out as well. These are going usually until like 1 or 2 in the morning, sometimes even later. So if you're a night owl, you'll definitely want to check those out at the convention. My next tip is to schedule however many events you want. Make it your convention. There are some people that don't schedule any events. They say, I'm going to go in the vendor hall, I'm going to go, play games back in my hotel in the evening, or I'm going to go to the JW Marriott where there's open gaming 24 hours a day once the convention starts. And that's great. And there are other people who will say, I'm going to schedule events from Thursday at 8 a.m. to Sunday at 4 p.m. And you could also do it that way as well. But just schedule however many you want. I've found going for 4 or 5 years now that what really works well for me is if I schedule a decent amount of events. I find myself liking to be able to play those games in a setting that's already organized and set up for me. I'm not going to have to learn the rules, from the rule book. I'm going to be taught the rules during that gaming session, and those events I find a lot of fun. So I usually have like 3 or 4 of those a day that I will try to sit down and play games at. Now, people will tell you sometimes too that Gen Con is not a gaming convention, it's just a shopping convention, and I would disagree 100% on that as well. I think there are plenty of gaming opportunities if you seek them out and if you schedule them in advance, and you have so many games available to play at Gen Con, whether you go to the gaming library, whether you schedule a specific game, there's so many games that you can play, and so schedule as many events as you want. If you're somebody that thinks, I don't really know if I'm going to spend that much time in the vendor hall, but that seems like the main thing to do, don't be afraid if you don't spend, a ton of time in there, particularly if you maybe only have one day in there, or if you have a couple hours each day. But if you're playing those games, if you're scheduling events, if that's something that you really enjoy, then go for it and schedule a bunch of events at the convention. My next tip is, while you're in the vendor hall, be sure to check out the art show / artist alley. This is a bunch of artists that have all kinds of things available. Some have paintings that are available. Some have, bookmarks, stickers, portraits, lots of different styles of art, and they're always in the vendor hall in kind of a tucked away area in the back. So it's easy to miss them if you don't know that you're going over there specifically to look at that. But that area is usually a little less crowded. There's tons and tons of cool art to check out, and a lot of times you can meet the artist right there who created that art. And so if you're somebody that's interested in art, if you want to pick up something really unique at the convention, I would definitely make a point to check out that area. I love strolling through there every year and just looking at all the different types of art that are available and the styles of art. And I usually end up buying something, like I said, maybe a bookmark, a sticker, a poster, something like that. So definitely check that area out, especially if you're into art, but it's cool just to stroll through there and look at all that's available. That's my next tip. Check out the art show at Gen Con. So my next tip is one that pertains to getting the hottest games available at the convention. My big tip for this is that if you want that really hot game the first day of the convention on Thursday when the vendor hall opens, you want to be outside the vendor hall about an hour before opening. This only applies if you're going for the newest of the new, something that's very limited in its terms of quantity, or it's very hot and is likely going to sell out each day, or maybe even on the first day, depending on how the publisher decides to allocate their copies. You want to be outside the vendor hall at about 9 a.m. Just sitting there, just getting ready. Probably won't be a ton of people there yet. There'll be a few, but it won't be super packed yet. But you'll notice as that hour goes on from 9 to 10 that it will get very busy very quickly, especially starting about 9:30 or so. It will really start to pick up as people gather for the opening of the vendor hall, which is always very exciting every single year. But if there's something you really want to snag, be sure you're there right around 9 a.m. Also look at the map beforehand and see where that booth is that you want to go to and which door might be best to position yourself out. There's multiple entrances into the vendor hall, and depending on which side of the vendor hall the booth you want to go to is on, it might be smarter to line up at one particular door over another. So it's another tip that kind of coincides with this one. But if there's something you want and you know it's going to be hard to get, there's not a lot of copies of it, get there about an hour before opening on Thursday. My next tip is that sometimes you can buy games even before the vendor hall opens, and usually sometimes an hour or two before the vendor hall opens. How do you do this, you ask? Well, there are certain publishers that have rooms all to themselves in the convention center. Some of them are on the first floor. Other rooms are up on the second floor of the convention center. And these rooms usually open, in my experience, right around 9 a.m. or so. And you can run in there and you can snag games for the most part. I went in DeVere's room last year and got a copy of Cities before the vendor hall even opened. I went in the Scorpion Masqué room and Hachette and got a copy of Chronologic before the vendor hall opened. So there are opportunities sometimes to purchase games early, and sometimes really hot, popular games as well. So make sure you look at the map, look at which vendors are going to have those specific rooms set up. Sometimes if vendors do pre-orders, you can pick them up, early during that time as well. So you can just get that out of the way early on in the day. But that's a really great experience, especially if you're there early and you're waiting for the vendor hall to open up. You can wander into some of those other rooms, see what's available, see if there's anything interesting in there that you want to check out. My next tip is to check out the costume contest and the cosplay parade at Gen Con. This happens on Saturday. A little bit of conflicting info on Gen Con's website right now. It says it's going to start at 3, but then later down on the page it says it's going to start at 4. But it'll be Saturday afternoon at some point, and it will be hard to miss. You will see a ton of attendees all dressed up in elaborate costumes snaking through the convention center. This is a lot of fun to watch and just check out all the variety of costumes that people have come up with and organized and displayed for this year at Gen Con. This is a fun thing that I really enjoy watching every single year. Everybody is in really good spirits while they walk by and show off their costumes and their cosplay. And if you've never watched it before, it's definitely something to check out. You can kind of line up just about anywhere. There is a certain route that it follows, but it'll be easy to see where it's going and when it's coming. There'll be a lot of noise and hooting and hollering, and again, people will be excited to see all the cosplay and the costumes. So that's Saturday afternoon. Be sure to check that out, the costume contest at Gen Con. Also, if you want to participate in the costume contest at Gen Con, if you're somebody that does cosplay or has a really cool costume, there's more info on the Gen Con website on how you can get involved with that and actually walk in the parade on Saturday afternoon. And my last tip is there is a space at Gen Con to just take a few minutes and escape from all of the noise and the craziness and everything going on around you. And that is the quiet room at Gen Con. This is in the convention center. It's going to be in room 211 this year on the second floor of the Indiana Convention Center. Open from Thursday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., Sunday from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. And this is a really quiet space. You can't talk in this room. Your phone has to be on silent mode. It's usually very dark in there, and it's just a spot to relax and recharge. Some people will go in there and take a quick nap. Some people will just go in there to sit and relax and enjoy some calm before they get back out into the craziness of the convention. But if you need to just take a few minutes away from everything and get out of the craziness that's going on, be sure to check out that quiet room. Again, it's on floor 2 of the convention center in room 211. So there's all my tips for Gen Con. If you're going this year, I'd love to say hi to you. I'll be wandering around all 4 days in downtown Indianapolis at the convention. And again, I have another video with more Gen Con tips. Be sure to check that out. Be sure to check out my other videos as well, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Until next time, I'm Jared. You've been checking out Specifically Solo.